Alhamdulillah, Assalamu alaikum. I cannot rap like the sister. I cannot rhyme like the sister. I'm just going to, here we go. I can't rap, I can't rhyme, but I will share my mind. How was that? Okay, got it. Today, what I'd like to do, as most of you know, it's really important that everything I do is Islamically, Quranically based and following the Sunnah. So today I'm going to read 4 different verses from the Quran, and 3 verses and then chapter 96. There's only a few verses in it. And again, we'll be referencing the forelock, and then I'm going to refresh or remind us why that frontal lobe and that forelock is so important. We'll review the 5 subcortical units of the frontal lobe. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the Quran, and we'll start with chapter 65, verse 2 and 3. Actually, this was, when we talk about focus and that frontal eye field in particular, it's really important to remember why. And I could almost cry. One of my daughters sent me a verse today, sent it to our group chat, the children and I, and it was this one. And it's so fit into tonight, that I told her, I said, I originally had 3, but now I have this one. And I said, this is actually so, mashallah, this is so perfect. I'm going to start the talk with chapter 65, verses 2, and she actually sent half of 2 and all of 3. I'm going to start with verse 2 from this chapter, though, and it's referencing. This is some of the verses about how a husband and wife, how families handle divorce. But you'll see, especially with verse 3, why I like this so much. Then, when they are about to fulfill their term appointed, either take them back, referencing wives and spouses and that, either take them back in a good manner or part with them in a good manner, and take for witness 2 persons from among you, Muslims, and establish the witness for Allah. That will be an admonition given to him who believes in Allah and the last day, and whosoever fears Allah and keeps his duty to him, he will make a way for him out from every difficulty, acknowledging that for husbands and wives and married couples and divorces, it's a difficulty. Now, verse 3. So she actually sent that part, and whosoever fears Allah and keeps his duty to him, he will make a way for him to get out from every difficulty. Verse 3, and he will provide him from sources he never could imagine, and whosoever puts his trust in Allah, then he will suffice him. Verily, Allah will accomplish his purpose. Indeed, Allah has set measures for all things. And again, it's really important, because right hemisphere, left hemisphere, one side is motivated by avoiding pain, the other side is generally motivated by pursuing pleasure. So we've got 2 references to pain, and the other one pleasure or rewards and comfort, and that for me is a very comforting verse. Now we go into chapter 96. Iqra, read in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists. He has created man from a clot, a piece of thick coagulated blood. Read, and your Lord is most generous, who has taught the writing by pen. The first person to write was a prophet Enoch or Idris, who has taught writing by the pen. He taught man that which he knew not. Nay, verily, man does transgress all bounds, because he considers himself self-sufficient. Surely unto your Lord is the return. Have you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, seen him, Abu Jahl, who prevents a slave, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he prays? Tell me if he, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is on the guidance of Allah or enjoins piety. Tell me if he, the disbeliever, denies the truth and turns away. Knows he not that Allah does see what he does? Nay, if he, Abu Jahl, the disbeliever, ceases not, we will catch him by the forelock, a lying, sinning forelock. Then let him call upon his council of helpers. We will call the guards of hell to deal with him. Nay, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do not obey him. Fall prostrate and draw near to Allah. Now we move into our warnings, our fear stimulation, if you will. Then we turn to chapter 66, verse 6, and this has been one of the ones that has always stuck with me. O you who believe, ward off from yourselves and your families a fire whose fuel is men and stones, over which are appointed angels, stern and severe, who disobey not from executing the commands they receive from Allah, but do that which they are commanded. And then finally, the verse that jumped out at me just the other day and was going to head this off, but then I thought, hope, warning, warning, hope. Chapter 17, verse 82. And this, as a doctor, right? And as this health class or these health recommendations, this healing. This is verse 82, chapter 17. And we send down the Quran, that which is a healing and a mercy to those who believe. And it increases the and let me start again. And we send down from the Quran that which is a healing and a mercy to those who believe in Islamic monotheism and act on it. And it increases the non-believers in nothing but loss. So this, for me, this is a beautiful description, and there's now becoming so much research and science about reading it, listening to it in Arabic, the rhythmicity of it to stimulate brain function, to ramp us down, stimulating the parasympathetic, the vagus nerve, and parasympathetic, the calming system, that's rest and digest, the healing system. Beautiful in the sense that it says that which is a healing and a mercy, or in other translations, a healing and a blessing. I love this verse. And that's how we're going to start today. Because what I'd like to do is I'd like to review the forelock, which can be both a benefit or a curse, because if it comes in another verse, Allah tells us that he has every living creature by their forelock. So it literally can't be, as some translators would say, the hair, the forelock hair. Because if the Quran says every living creature, there are plenty of hairless animals, or hairless men, in my case, hairless men, that have no forelock hair to grab hold of. But Allah has a hold of my forelock. So, and a lying, sinning forelock, of course, hair doesn't lie. People that use fake hair or something may be lying, but the idea is it can't just reference a hairline, because the Quran is clear on every living creature. Allah has us by our forelock, okay? And again, now this leads us right into a refresher of why that is so important, and this frontal lobe and the 5 subcortical regions in the frontal lobe are so hugely important in terms of human beings, taking care of ourselves, taking care of society, preventing you and your families from a fire whose fuel is mankind and stones. So how hot is that? That even stones are fuel, right? But the Quran is a healing and a blessing for the people who believe in it. So now, let's get into the 5 subcortical regions. The first one I'd like to talk about is, of course, I'll remind you, is the motor, premotor, and supplemental motor areas. hugely important when we think about sins or even being healthy. Our motor areas. Think about what that means. We are literally moving to health or moving to good deeds, or we're moving away from health if we're not using our motor areas. If the only thing you use your motor area for is to get to work, do work, and then come home back to your recliner and to the remote control for your TV, you're not using it correctly. And of course, for the believers out there, if you're moving towards sins and not away from sins, then of course you're not using it correctly. So the motor unit is hugely important, and that is going to influence another area, your frontal eye field. Your frontal eye field is huge. And what are we told as believers again? What are we told? We're told to read Quran. We're told to memorize Quran. We're told to study the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, study the tafsir. Literally, what you pay attention to, what you look at all the time is what you are training your brain to understand is what's important. And that's going to influence another area, your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That is really important. That's probably what we would say is your executive function, meaning thought processes, planning, initiating good behaviors, hopefully, inhibiting bad behaviors. A great example is for people think of different tics as being maybe a left-sided issue, when actually, if the right side is active, it inhibits those unwanted actions. So rather than dealing with the left-sided tic movement or the excessive motor activity, you'd want to stimulate a right-sided dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, right-sided motor area. So that's how the two hemispheres work together in dealing with that. And then if you move it to actual thought processes and good and bad actions, benefiting society on the right, just taking from society, excessive left a lot of cases. We see that in our re-elected white guy. That always reminds me of the joke that one of my mentors uses. On the left, there's nothing right. And that definitely applies to our re-elected white guy. So you've got the motor unit, or the motor, supplemental, and the premotor, the motor, premotor, and supplemental motor areas, which are going to carry you towards your good deeds, which are going to carry you into your exercise, which are going to commit the actions that your frontal eye field, what you're paying attention to, and your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, okay, that's what we're going to do, sends it back, and your motor centers take you to it. All of these three are all here in this forelock, or this frontal lobe area. And then, of course, right with that, we've got really cool, the orbital frontal cortex. 10, 11, and 12, mainly 11 and 12. Here you've got your social and emotional regulation. This is where you are actually going to, this is where the people would try to fit in with society. You decide whether accumulating lots and lots of money to keep to yourself, or do you accumulate lots and lots of money and share it with the needy? Share it with family, share it with friends, share it with neighbors, as we're taught in Islam and the Quran. So that's really, really the orbital frontal cortex. I told you the story about one of my patients that told me she'd never hire a sexual offender, convicted sexual offender. She'd never hire a convicted fraudster. She'd never hire a convicted liar and crook. And then I asked her, well, why would you vote for one and hire him as your president? And she said, oh, well, it's different. Well, obviously her orbital frontal cortex in theory is working. But then you vote for or you hire people like that, and it's not working in practice, if that makes sense. And that's where, again, when we talk about how I treat patients and what we're doing in the office, based on the strengths and weaknesses between the hemispheres, the different areas, the Brodmann areas. That's how we determine how to heal. And again, think about what takes place here with the healing and the blessings and the mercy in the Quran. If you are literally reading, and I can thank you guys a lot, because the more I talk about it, I want to be one of the ones that does it. There's punishment for those who say but don't do, who chide others, or who encourage others but don't do things themselves. There's a whole hadith about that. So thank you guys, because having this class on a regular basis makes me do more from an Islamic perspective, and I really appreciate that. And really, since I'm talking about it all the time, you can see with my daughter sending us group texts about different verses, and all the kids, we talk about stuff all the time. And my sons often tell me they'll be talking to a coworker or a friend, and they'll ask them questions, and then they'll bring questions to me or to their sisters. And we're always sharing this stuff, because the same thing I'm sharing with you, I share with them. And how do you say, if anyone were to ask you, what does Dr. McBride really consider important? I think everyone out there could clearly say the brain and our religion. I mean, that's almost all I talk about, or I relate everything back into that. And it's really nice, because the more you read the Quran, the more you realize it applies to every day, right? And then the fifth area, hugely important. Hugely important. Right behind all of that, especially right behind your orbital frontal cortex, right behind there is what we call your anterior cingulate cortex. That is your motivation. That is, you can train it to be stronger. Plenty of research, all kinds of research out there. The more things that you find difficult that you do anyway strengthens, and actually can enlarge, strengthens, because you're using more. So, and it'll make more connections, and it'll have more of an influence. The stronger that is, the more motivated you are to do your stuff. Like I said, with a re-elected white guy and his compatriots, these guys, you can tell what they're motivated to do. It's for me, I see all this stuff about sharing military secrets with family and friends and group chats and people all over the place accidentally. And none of them, there's no punishment there, because they're all on the same page with mutual flattery. And that all that mutual, oh, you could never do anything wrong talk. You got to remember, true friends will point out shortcomings. Don't need to do it all the time. We should always do it politely. But the idea is you can see what they're motivated to do. And in this case, you can see the gross corruption of a left hemispheric dominance. Now, plenty of people have strong left hemispheres. One of my daughters, we always laugh and joke about that. But that's the one, she gets things done. She's very protective of family and friends. She does so much for all of us to show her affection, her love, her support. But again, she's on the left side as compared to me, who leans right. I think both my boys are, and my other daughter is really close to the middle with a little bit of a leaning left. She was a phenomenal athlete. Actually, they all were. Mashallah. But the idea is that she is definitely left, but it's not with the corruption that is displayed, not just here in America, I mean, all over the world, but you can see it, how selfish people can become without any guidance at all. Very selfish is compared to, if your orbital frontal cortex is operating correctly, you're very selfless. And it's a balance thing. Like the Quran tells us, don't donate into poverty and become a burden. But again, don't hoard everything either. Share that stuff, because you didn't create money. Look at one of his, a re-elected white guy's biggest partners. in this comedy show that we've got going on right now. That guy didn't invent anything, did he? He was a strong left brain. He saw the pattern. He could see how it was going to be successful. So he got involved. Then he pushed the developers, he pushed the inventors, the company founders, he pushed them out and bought it over, right? So very strong left, very pattern oriented. He can see how to get things done. The idea is he only does things for himself. Now imagine if somebody like that much financial, for example, that financial success, actually had a balanced approach to things or a stronger right hemisphere and actually shared the wealth that he can't spend anyway. Think about how much good could be done if he took the middle road like the Quran tells Muslims to do. Take that middle road, and again, for me, forelock, middle road, equality of hemispheric activity, the balanced functions that are taking place in the 5 subcortical regions of the frontal lobes. I mean, think about what takes place there. And one of the goals of this class is not just to teach you, like my training is with Dr. Malillo is really, it started out as being very focused, and that's where his most of his time is spent, is helping children, and really severely non-speaking, autistic, like violent, because they're so frustrated, not because it's a violent nature. They're just so frustrated because you've got that strong left hemisphere and you can't communicate, you can't share. People are talking around you and you thinking you're too dumb to make anything work, and yet you're probably genius level on the left, but you don't have enough. Remember, right-sided starts with self-awareness, and then it moves into sharing that self-awareness and understanding others. Imagine the right is so weak and the left is so strong that they're not self-aware enough to even control the fine motor movement to communicate, but they've got all the words in there. They've got the communication skills, and we've shown that over and over again. They just don't know how to control it. They don't have the self-awareness to be able to feel and control the muscles to speak, and other muscles too. Particularly fine detail stuff. That takes a lot of awareness and self-control to control those movements of speaking and writing and things. But imagine if that stuff gets balanced out. Now, I look at it, dealing with us as adults, if you take this information in, not just for where I started, but literally for yourself first. Learn about yourself, practice stuff on yourself, as we've had classes on right hemispheric dominance, we've had a class on left hemispheric dominance, we've had right anxiety, left-sided anxiety. If you can take the information we pick up all the time and strengthen your weak area, we've talked about it, if you're way too empathetic, which, everything hurts because you care so much. Logic that stuff out, push it over to the left and start creating those action steps on how to be more benefit to people. What action steps can you take? And once you start to train that left to take action, you actually start to see, well, there's nothing I can do with that. I can't help on that front. So then your brain starts to realize if there's nothing to do, your right side pushes it out of the way. Now you don't have that anxiety with it anymore. If you find that your spouse or family members are saying, you just don't care about anything, you're so cut and dry, you're this, you're that, well, then what you can do is start training in more empathy, more asking yourself, for example, asking yourself why, asking other people why. Really learn that, and then train in right hemisphere by doing left body stimulation, left body sports, left body activity, left muscle stuff, fine detailed work like this. Well, fine detail would be more including the left. Try big movement. I like basketball. You could probably use soccer. I'm horrible at that though. But I like the dribbling aspect. I use dribbling with my stroke patients. Huge to integrate both sides of the brain. So we really need to look at, and in particular the 5 subcortical regions today in the frontal lobe and the forelock, and to make sure it's not a lying, sinning forelock. We need to look at those, and for the believers in the audience, we need to look at those in terms of like the 4 verses I gave us today, and how as believers we have that security blanket that will provide for us. But there are also those reminders, right, that warn us against making those bad decisions, against doing those bad deeds. And of course, we're reminded in the Quran that human beings are not perfect, and we literally can, if we seek forgiveness, it's all about repentance and forgiveness and trying to stay away from sins. And that, for me, is such a comfort, because I know I'm not perfect. And I think we should all realize that, like I said, particularly with these 4 verses. I wanted to open this up for a lot of questions, because this 5 subcortical units, the focus and the goal setting, does anyone have anything they want to ask right now? Nothing typed? Then what we'll do, and you can type in and interrupt me if you want to. I'd like to give you some... Oh, okay, go ahead, sister.
Excuse me, when you said you can interrupt me.
Yeah.
Thank you. What are some of the most unnoticeable blocks that a person can have in goal setting? I mean, the blocks that can, like...
Yes, that's a great question. The biggest, whenever I talk goal setting, whenever I give talks, and I do talk, believe it or not, I talk outside of here. If I talk to patients or I'm at a speaking gig somewhere, it's almost written in stone that someone will either interrupt, or at the end when I offer question time, it's a lock. Half the audience might say, I don't know how to goal set. And literally, it's at the end of the talk, and I've just walked you through it. The biggest block is thinking that it is more complicated than it is. That's why last week, and that's why I'm following up with, I just quick reviewed those 5 areas. If you look at it, if you consider it important, if you move to it by taking the seat, sitting down in front of the computer, or reading, you've started using those 5 subcortical units, your frontal lobe, the anterior cingulate kicked in to get you motivated to do it. You got motivated enough to come to class today. Your motor units kicked in to get you in front of the screen. Your frontal eye field, you're paying attention. Your orbital frontal cortex, you waited until I said interrupt, and then you came in, right? Socially acceptable behavior. And then the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, your executive functioning area, you made a good decision. So imagine at the end of my talk, someone says, I don't know how to do it, I can't do it. I just walked you through it. It's so easy, sister or whoever, and I just had this question the other day when I was talking to 2 teenagers and their mother, and the 2 teenagers were trying to get it right. And the one said, I can't do it, I don't know how, did it, and I just walked her through it. Literally, it's the hardest step is when the first thing you say to yourself, or in the class I can see it, you say to yourself, oh, I can't do this. Well, your brain's going to believe you more than me in most cases. So what you've got to do is literally, that's something you never, ever, ever say to yourself in the sense of doing something. You have to literally, like with a goal setting, it's easy. You set a goal, no matter what it is. Why do you want to do it? And you write it down. Why do you want to do it? Make it more than yourself. Literally make it more than yourself. And number 3, what's the first action you're going to take? All you have to do is say, I want to lose 50 pounds. And, oh, I can't do that. Well, don't say that, because you can. You gained it, you can lose it. So what you're going to do is you're going to lose 50 pounds. Now, what's your reason? Because I want to be there for my kids and my grandchildren. I want to set a better example, in my case, in the office. I want to set it for my kids. My mother and I, she's using the Versa Climber. She used the Versa Climber today. Then she took the dog out for a walk. She didn't feel like lifting weights, so I lifted by myself. You see what I'm saying? So she had a goal to exercise today. So that was the first thing she did. What is her purpose? To be healthy while she's still alive. She's going to go on a family trip with my daughters, and they're going up to visit my brother and his kids. You see what I'm saying? So that's her purpose. And then the action step, the first thing she did today, after she made her coffee, was jump on my Versa Climber, my Maxi Climber, whatever you know it as. Does that make sense? So when you think about it, most people, the biggest hindrance is the first thing they say to themselves. We're going to set goals today. Oh, I tried, I can't do that. Well, we're kind of all done then, because it is easy. That's why last week I emphasized doing it every day. Make 1 goal, make 5 goals, organize whatever you know you have to do tomorrow. Today's Thursday again. What are we going to do tonight? The goal is to read Surah Al Alaq. What's the time frame? In my case, I jumped to the end. The purpose is to please Allah and to try to earn Jannah and set an example for my kids, because they know what I'm going to be doing tonight before I go to bed, inshallah. And then the action step is to do it. I love listening to the Quran, like you all know, before I go to bed. So I could easily say, oh man, I'm tired. I did this today. I did that today. I typed. I'm working on the computer program. I wrote part of the book that's going to accompany it, blah, blah, blah. I exercised. I whatever. I'm going to go to bed early. I'm not going to do it. Then I oversleep and I got to rush, and I don't do it before I go to work. And then I don't do it before I get to the masjid. And then it's not done at all, right? You get demotivated. This is the time when I would recommend the word never. Never say I can't do it, unless it's the obnoxious stuff like jump from one edge of the Grand Canyon to the other. But when it comes to goal setting, the 50 pounds, for example, I want to lose 50 pounds. Okay, what's the purpose? Pretend it's just to be healthy and make it a little bit bigger for my kids or something, for my grandkids. I want a role model. I want to be there, okay? Get a big purpose and make it a gigantic purpose. So you've got a goal, 50 pounds. You've got, and I like 50 because it's an easy number. You've got a purpose. Do it for somebody more than yourself. And your action step, tomorrow, I'm going to eat a smaller breakfast. Tomorrow, you're not going to put cream in your coffee, or you're going to put less, whatever the case. But the idea is tomorrow, that's going to be my action step. Or tonight, I'm not going to eat snacks after this show. And my goal, my time frame is 50 pounds in 52 weeks. Now it's achievable, isn't it? So you can start out with, oh, I can't lose 50 pounds. But if our goal is by next Ramadan or next Hajj, a year from now, right? Then that's only a pound a week. And most of you know this is probably one of my favorite examples. The goal is 50 pounds. The purpose is for family stuff. The action step is I'm going to eat less breakfast. I'm not going to eat after this show tonight. I'm not going to eat after a certain time. I'm not going to eat these certain foods. There's 4 action steps right there. And then a time frame is a year from now. A year from now. Pretend that like I said, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? 50 pounds would be easy then, because it's a pound a week. Some weeks you'll lose a little more. Some weeks you'll be stagnant. But the thing is, to answer your question, sister, is you don't start the conversation like so many people in the classes I teach, so many, like the kids, the sister that said, oh, I can't set goals. We just talked about it. And it's easy if you do not start with, and the first thing she said when I stopped talking was, I can't do that. The second thing was I don't know how. And I had just said GPA, time frame. So I got to tell you, sister, the biggest hang up is when someone starts with, I can't. Because the famous quote is, you can or you can't, they're both right. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. The biggest thing is never, ever, ever, like goal setting, never, ever, ever say you can't. The only failure comes when you quit. Failure is not a thing. Failure only happens if you quit, because imagine these professional athletes. They lose games, but I would never consider that a failure, because you go back to practice the next day. You should practice harder. You should figure out the whys. And your goal is to win the next one, to do better the next one, to train harder, to practice better, whatever the case is, right? And then they show up for the next game and try again. So I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of failure only happens when you quit. And again, 50 pounds in 52 weeks. Imagine you lost 40. Would that be failure? No. You adjust your time frame. Number 4, right? You adjust your time frame and you add another month. The last 5-10 pounds is always the hardest anyway. So that's all you do. If you make a plan, set a goal, have a purpose, take some action steps, and you have the time frame, you've got a plan to achieve. Now, if something changes, you change your plan. Suppose you get to it quicker. Now you realize 50 pounds is a little too much, so you're going to hit the gym harder and put on a few pounds of muscle weight. Now you realized and you changed your plan. Does that make sense, sister?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, and that I can't. Yeah. Doesn't this is something a goal I've set, and I've been working on it for. Say, and then I meet people that say, when they see me, they say, "Did you ever finish that book?"
Right.
Yeah.
Did you, sister, let me ask, and if you want to, you can answer. Did you write in the book at all today?
Not today.
Okay.
I thought about it all day. Having interruptions.
Well then, if you know you're going to be interrupted, go to bed earlier tonight and get up earlier tomorrow morning. I know it sounds easy, it's not. But but if you, most of the time, most of us know where our interruptions are going to happen. We know the times when family and friends are going to call. We know, my kids know my work schedule. And I usually get calls. If they want to talk to me during the day, they'll call me during lunch. They'll shoot me a text, "Are you available?" Or they'll call right away. Right at the end of the day, they start calling at a certain time if they want to talk, or if they have a question, or if we're making plans for something. I know, they know, and I know. So I plan my schedule that way, if that makes sense. I know I get a certain time during lunch that I study my sign language. I read some of Malillo's work. This morning, the first thing I did while my mother was using the Versa Climber was work on that computer project and the book that's going to accompany it. So it's literally, you're going to be interrupted. What you should do is be writing. The only recommendation I would make to you is, the minute you think about it, start doing it, and then be interrupted while you are doing it, if that makes sense. And the minute the interruption ends, start doing it again. Would that help at all?
Yes, and my time frame is great.
Yeah.
Because I'm an early riser.
Oh, that's awesome.
You might find me up at 1 o'clock in the morning. So that's great, because nobody I know gets that time.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm one of those people that don't get up at 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Well, that's perfect. And there's a lot of research that goes into when it's super quiet and it's super early like that, your creativity, the alpha waves, and some people talk about the theta waves. Don't worry about those names, but those are strongest upon waking or just before you nod off. So waking up like that would be awesome. And if you had your stuff right there, then that would be an action step. Why don't you prepare everything, and before you go to bed tonight, after you read Surah Al Alaq, then what you're going to do is set your stuff up so that when you wake up, it's right there and you get started. You know, make your wudu, make sure you're awake, and then pray 2 rak'ah and sit down and start.
That sounds like a great idea.
Doesn't it? And you gave it to me. That's your idea.
I think when you said that, it made me think a lot of times I didn't just do it is because it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm,
It was
exactly.
somewhere.
Yes, that's I like I said, if I'm going to type in the morning, like today, everything was literally right here, and then I knew I was going to pull a few verses out of the Quran, and then I added one because of my daughter's text. What I did was my Quran was over here, the computer was ready. What else did I have? I had my notebook to mark the pages in the Quran so that I could get to them right away at the beginning of the talk. I set up everything yesterday. I literally set up everything yesterday. So last night, I was already in the groove, if that makes sense. So when I woke up this morning, I talked to one of my sons. My son, as he was getting ready for work, I talked to my mother, and then, well, I prayed first, obviously. I prayed, then I did all that. And then I was like, man, everything's ready. I'm literally anticipating working. And then my mother and I came out here. She jumped on the Versa Climber and I jumped on the computer because it was all set up. It was so, because I started yesterday. Today it was what you call an open loop. Until I got to it, I didn't close that loop, and my brain was like, you set that stuff up, you did it, get over there. I'm thinking, get over there. So do that tonight. See if that doesn't work for you, and then tell us next week.
Okay, I will.
Please.
I will do just that.
Inshallah. Absolutely.
Inshallah. I never even thought of doing it like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I was always thinking about it, but
Don't we?
I couldn't see it. You know, it's put. Let me see. I got this book where it says manuscript. You know, they're all on, put up, and they should be sitting out.
Yeah. No, put that stuff out. Set it like if you're big into exercise but you lack motivation, you better put that equipment right in front of your TV, right? You're looking at it all the time. Put it, like you said, if you put it away, you remember it later. But if it's right here, the only thing I see is my hand, right? If it's right here, that's what we see. So put your manuscript up, put your stuff up there, and make it like front and center. Yeah.
Yes. So you can't, no matter which way you turn, you're going, okay.
Yeah.